everyone and welcome to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and it is time for another Copic speed paint. Just before we get to that though, I have to say a very special hello to someone. Cassius, hi if you're watching. Your mummy told me all about you, so I hope that you're going to be a good boy and help her make some lovely pictures with the markers that I sent. You have a good day. Alright guys, that's me, I'm done with that, so let's get to top down view and we can get going. Pew. So today's Copic character is our friend Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It would have been an obvious choice just to draw Sonic, but in all honesty I think he's pretty annoying. I was mostly overjoyed and have a place in my heart for Tails because as a youngster you were either firmly in the Nintendo camp or in the Sega camp, and I was a Nintendo person through and through, and it was in fact my first Copic character, which I will leave a link to in the description and also the end card if you want to go back and watch that one. But my best friend at the time when I was at school, she had a Sega. And Sonic was all the rage, so we used to enjoy going over to each other's houses and playing the opposite game, and that was in the days long before memory cards or autosave or any of all the cool stuff you get now. And it was kind of a case of when you were playing Sonic the Hedgehog you had to take a turn each because multiplayer didn't exist, 2-player was limited to certain games like fighting games, that kind of thing. And when Sonic the Hedgehog 2 came out, all of a sudden there was this extra character who was supposed to help you while you were playing the game. And the most amazing and coolest thing is that if you had a second controller, someone else could pick up that second controller and take control of Tails, and you could actively participate when your friend was playing and help them collect rings. Now if you were booted out the screen, you know, if Sonic ran too far on, you were just kind of brought back automatically. But even at that, it was the coolest thing ever to be able to do that and actually play in the, I suppose, what was the very basic beginnings of co-op mode in a video game. That was awesome. So aside from the fact that Tails isn't nearly as abrasive as Sonic, he is just a much better character because he can still do all the cool speedy spins and runs that Sonic can do, but he can fly. Well, it's more kind of like a helicopter float, but see when you're fighting all the bosses, I think it's Dr. Robotnik, I don't know if it was him in the second one. Anyway, when you're doing the boss battles, you can float about while he's bouncing about in his funny robot machine things, and you can get multiple hits in which counted towards you beating that boss. So he was by far a superior character when it came to Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Aside from the fact that he is like a little ginger two-tailed fox, I mean, like, what's not to like? You know, Sonic's a blue hedgehog. Where are you going to find a blue hedgehog? More to the point, he's a blue hedgehog with attitude. Anyway, so that is why I decided to include Tails in this series of drawings. And I am equal parts happy and annoyed with this piece. I am happy with it because the inking and the colouring went really well, and the purpose of me doing this series is to get to know my Copic markers and develop my skills with it. So in that sense I have achieved everything that I wanted to achieve. I am unhappy with it because I rushed the sketching, and because of that I have drawn the eye offset. If you look at his left eye, it is in completely the wrong position and it throws the entire drawing out. It just doesn't look quite right, and when you see the finished inked piece you can see that it just ruins it, and it's such a shame, and it's simply because I wasn't patient enough when I was sketching. So a bit of a bittersweet piece for me. I was really happy about how the line work went. It's something I kind of struggle with, especially if my hand is having one of its sort of shaky days, but my line work here is consistent and it's tidy, and it's the first time I've really noticed that without having to take, you know, a huge amount of care over it. Normally if I want to get this standard of line work I have to really take my time, and you know, every line is sort of very slightly piece by piece, but it's something that I've just kind of grown to accept because depending on how good my hand is will depend on the quality of my line work. So this has given me a little bit of hope, and I am hoping that practice is making this better, and you know, that is something that's going to continue to improve despite the fact that I've got a bit of a dodgy hand. So that was pretty good as well. But as I say, my eye keeps going back to that left hand eye, and I'm so annoyed about it. I'm just so annoyed with myself. But anyway, I took away the graphite and I was trying to find something to draw around here because I decided it needed a little bit of a background. That is the cup that I normally keep my paintbrushes in. And then I tested out some blending just to make sure that the colours that I'd chosen out were going to be suitable for Tails, and they were quite close to, you know, his original colouring. And of course he is orange. So I'm just putting a base layer of Y17 down here, which I think is golden yellow. Anyway, Y17, and at first I thought that was going to be far too light, but because I'd picked the other two oranges, by the time I put the shading in, I knew that it was going to be absolutely spot on. So there was no major disasters for a change. If any of you have watched some of my other Copic speed paints, I usually drop a pen at some point and it makes a dirty great big mark somewhere on the paper. I am pleased to report that that did not happen this time, and all of the colouring actually went really, really well. And again, that is a first for me. That's never happened before. There's usually some sort of mishap, or I misjudge the colours that I've picked, or the blending doesn't go too well, and I can honestly say hand on heart that I didn't have this issue. Something I did figure out while I was colouring this was I was having problems previously with the ink bleeding in to other areas, and I was kind of blaming the paper, and I was a bit disappointed with the paper because I didn't expect feathering and bleeding from the official Copic paper. Something that affects it is the number of layers of ink you have down while it's still wet. So when you are blending, if you're putting layer upon layer of ink on top of each other while it's still wet, it has to go somewhere and it's starting to spread out. So when I was doing the blending on this, I was waiting a tiny bit, like a fraction longer, for that first layer of ink to dry very slightly before I went back in with, you know, the next colour to start blending them out. And I did it for this background here, and I did quite a lot of layering with this background and quite a lot of blending, and I had minimal problems with it bleeding into other parts of the picture. So that's just something that might help some of you if you are working with Copics and you're not familiar with them. I prefer to wet blend because I think you get a better gradient, but I was obviously able to sort of ease up on that just a little bit to stop that, you know, soaking through onto that lovely orange that we've got down for Tails. So that's something that that I found really helpful, and I'm glad I've found it out now, because I think I'm only like 5 or 6 characters in the entire book. So that's going to set me in good stead when I start to move further on. I picked these shades of blue because the background in the first level in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has this lovely sort of gradient blue sky behind it, and it's a colour that offsets well with the orange. If you take a little look at your colour wheel, or you know your colour theory, you'll know that blue and orange are pretty good colours to go together. So I felt that this just gave it like a bit more of a finish rather than just plonking the character in the middle of the page, which is what I have been doing up till now. So I do see that as a step forward as well in terms of my Copic art. I had a bit of an off choice with the reds here. That darkest red is garnet, and it's actually too dark, but I didn't have anything that was lighter than that, so that's just a gap in my collection. When I was filling in the eye here, I misjudged the placement of the highlight, so I've just filled it all in with my fine liner, and I decided I would go back later with a white gel pen or paint pen and put the highlight back in. So yeah, this gap in the reds, that was a bit of a problem, but there wasn't really much I could do about that because, as I say, that's just the Copics I have. I didn't want to leave the white bits completely white because I think they look unfinished and quite stark. So I've just taken my W1, so that's my warm grey 1 marker, and I just wanted to put in a little bit of shadow here, and it just helps us give that sort of more of a 3D effect and just kind of like bring the white areas to life. There is quite a lot of white in the picture, aside from the, you know, the surrounding area that I didn't colour obviously, but you can see how much it brings out the curvature in the tail there, and it just really helps to just add that dimension that you want when you're using markers like this, so that you don't end up with a really flat cartoonish piece. So I was so glad for my W1 marker, and it's a marker I use surprisingly often, especially if I can't decide between warm or cool greys. I always find that going with the warm is usually the better option, unless you're colouring metal. If it's metal, go for your cool greys. So just getting in a little bit of shading now here, and you can see that dark red really sticks out like a sore thumb, and I tried to kind of blend it out a little bit. It didn't go too well, but in the grand scheme of things I'm actually not that bothered, because I'm still looking at Tails' wonky eye. This is my favourite bit, going back in with the oranges and getting the shading in on his body. That is like the best fun ever. I really enjoy blending with Copics, more so than I do with pencil actually. It's just, there's something really satisfying about it, and you can get really defined, you know, shading if you want it to be, you know, that sort of style, that cartoony style, but you can also blend them out and get some really nice smooth gradients that give off your shadow in a sort of more subtle fashion. And that's kind of what I was trying to achieve here with his tail. And again, I was trying to sort of emulate that curvature to show that his tail is round and it's not just this sort of flat thing on the paper, and that turned out really well as well. I was quite happy with my colour choices. I had YR04, and I think the other one was YR07. That was the two darker colours that I've used on top here, and as a set, those three colours go really well together, as you can see. And it's actually, yeah, it's been quite good. I was quite pleased with that. So I've made his body try to look as round as possible here, because his body's actually almost circular, but I think it looks a bit odd. So I opted, I mean, that was a stylistic choice to make his body slightly more oval shaped. And I just think it gives him a better proportion with his head as well, because otherwise I just think he looks a bit dumpy. Yeah, dumpy. So I'm just finishing off the side of his face here, and I did nothing to alleviate the wonky eye situation, but still, it's I think in terms of colour it looks quite good, and I'm quite proud of it for that. It's a shame I'm not proud of it otherwise. I didn't know that Tails had these little buckles under his socks either. I only found that out when I looked up some reference pictures. Anyway, so here I am just adding in some highlights. That's just a white gel pen, a Signal gel pen, and I popped all that in there just to make sure that everything was sort of finished off nicely, and you know, that just get it looking good. And that's it guys, that is everything. I hope you like my tails. You can let me know in the comments, and you can check out some other videos here. Hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more of the same thing, and we'll see you really soon back in the cave. Bye for now everyone.